All right, Yield Nerds, the world is a scary place as I record today's episode. The conflict in the Middle East has just gone to an all new level. Trade tariffs, aren't exactly in a good place. And so I started looking at rare earth stocks to just understand who makes them, how can we protect our supply, what are smart stocks to pick at this time, and that is what I will be sharing with you in this episode. We're up to 474 subscribers. Please remember there are a handful of playlists. The one that starts from the beginning is called the Income Investing Roadmap, but of course, there are deep dives into many other areas. And most importantly, remember that I have no magical powers, and so you need to check anything you hear and make your own decision. Well, today's episode has four parts as I show up shovel on hand, finding all kinds of rare earths in front of the New York Stock Exchange. We'll take a look at the market temperature and as always compare my portfolio performance with the S&P or the Nasdaq. And we'll look at the rare earth metals market. And I'm going to go on a little hunt to find stocks that qualify in my opinion. And I'll share what I bought. Well, my equity portfolio, as many of you know, is small but strong. The Nasdaq is going to put on a great show in the next few weeks. So my equity portfolio, as wonderful as it is, returning 7% in the last 3 months, will start paling in comparison with the 20% alleged returns that the Nasdaq will give in the next few weeks. Because as you know, there was a bear market about 2 months ago. And as we get out of the bear market, the NASDAQ has done an amazing job of coming back to where it was. So my performance is going to be compared to starting on day one at the bottom of the bear market. And, I did not move my entire portfolio on the day of the start of the bear market. So I'm still batting at 7%. I'm happy with where I am. My portfolio, for those of you who have been following, will know that it started with sub 1%, 0.5% in equities, and I'm now up to two and a quarter. So I'm slowly starting to add equities, but I have my own formula. I'll explain how I'm doing that. And let's get to today and rare earth metals. And as you can see, I'm unearthing all kinds of rare metals here. Things already come pre-formed. There is an Empire State Building looking molybdenum, deposit that is right in front of the New York Stock Exchange. Thank you, Dolly, for bringing that image. Uh, Before I dive deeper into rare metals and stocks, I want to make sure you understand that I am not an investment advisor. I'm not a wealth management advisor, and this is not tax advice. So please make sure you do your own digging. And I also don't do politics and pitching products and snake oil. Well, I'm going to start with a research paper that was issued by NATO last year. And NATO said, hey, there are 12 critical raw materials. These are very, very important to us. Notice the date, December 2024. And they said these are integral to our defense. And if these go away, the defense of NATO, including the United States, would be in peril. And they published this paper in December 2024. And this is what I call the come get me paper. And, if I was in the NATO, I would have said, hey, can we not publish where exactly the Achilles heels are? But, they didn't call me to ask my opinion. But instead, they said, you know what? This was endorsed by all of the defense ministers in June 2024. We did this study, and the reason we are publishing it, the public release, it's because we want to support our allies in securing essential materials. So everybody else watching, I want you to know we are going to protect our supply in these 12 things that are crucial. In my opinion, not the best idea, but hey, they didn't ask me. So here are the 12 absolutely critical defense raw materials that were published in the order of priority, where they said these, if, and I guess it's an alpha order, sorry. And so I started saying, gee, I wonder, we all know China is a leader in these. I wonder who else produces it and where can the countries of NATO turn if there is a supply chain disruption? And I want to look at it from an investor's perspective. So I went to the world's greatest research bank, which is called ChatGPT. And I said, hey, I'm going to give you a list of 10, 12 raw materials. Research which countries produce them, what percentage market share they have, and tell me the top three producers in each of them. And drum roll, here is the result. And if you go down the number one position in each of them, you know who wins the gold medal here very, very frequently. Outside of beryllium, the United States barely registers on the market, which is a terrifying thought. And you look at these countries, and they aren't exactly ones that you can turn around and say, "Hey, can you double your supply next month because we have a supply chain pinch?" And so this tells me that if I was the United States government, I am trying to figure out where can I get this if there is a supply chain disruption. But thankfully, I didn't have to do that. The government started creating incentives a long time ago, 2 years ago, before even NATO published its paper. The United States government said, we're going to create a whole bunch of grants. And these grants were started by the previous administration, continued and increased by the current administration, that said, if you can responsibly mine critical minerals, we'll give you money. And that is of great interest to me because I want to find out who's getting those grants. Are they public companies that are still getting the grants, in which case it is free shareholder value? And where are they located? And tell me more. And then I went into the critical minerals materials funding opportunities database, and I posted links to all of these sources, including the NATO paper, in the description of this video. So feel free to read them. And so the US has been cooking a response, and you can see it goes back to 2023. So well before the paper was published at the end of 2024, the US government said, we have a concentration risk here. So if you want to start mining some of these, we'll give you money. And those funding programs are being even strongly incentivized with the current administration. Then you go, gee, I wonder if there are US-based public companies who got those grants and who are mining those materials. And so once again, I turned to the great research partner, Mr. ChatGPT, and said, tell me publicly listed stocks that trade in that area. And ta-da, here comes ChatGPT and says, buy each material. Aluminum is Alcoa, Century Aluminum. Beryllium is Materion. Cobalt is ATI. Gallium is Cuervo, and so on. And it lists a bunch of companies. Some of these are US, some of these are Canadian. Some of these import the raw material from outside the US and process them here. They still have a supply chain risk. So, you know me, I have nothing better to do. So I organized these and I started going through every single one of them. So here are the aluminum stocks, the beryllium stocks, the cobalt, gallium, indium, graphite, lithium, and a blanket rare earth element stock list. You start there and you go, who is producing in the US? Who is processing in the US, but the import supply chain is not dependent on countries that may or may not always play ball? And you start narrowing it down from there. And then I run them through my usual filter. It's great that somebody got a grant, but are they producing revenue? Grant revenue is not GAAP revenue. Grant revenue will go into the cash flow statement and the balance sheet. It will not go into the income statement. So I started reading the 10 Qs of the public companies in that list, started looking at who's getting the money, and then do they produce operating cash flow? Meaning, are they really digging something that they are selling? And do they make a profit? How much volume of trading is there? If somebody's selling 12 stocks a day, I don't want that no matter how good it is. I'll wait until other people start buying and selling and the volume goes up. So my growth and value filters, I've reviewed them, including in the previous episode. Feel free to look at that. So what I then did is I took all the rare earth element stocks that are listed in the US. I excluded ADRs, I excluded European stocks, just so I can focus on US dollar denominated, US traded stocks that pass both the growth and the value filter, or at least one of the two. And I will tell you what I walked away with. Look at that. I got a big bag of rare metal stocks, and I am a happy camper. So here is what I ended up with. Taseko Mines. Taseko Mines is a Canadian miner. They recently got into a partnership with the native Canadian people there, and they said, you know what, we need security for Canada. We'll give you rights to mine our land. And that is a very mineral rich area. And you can read more about them in their 10Qs. US antimony is still mining for antimony. They got a whole bunch of grants, but they right now get antimony from outside the US and they process it, clean it, and they make some revenues there. Carpenter is a very interesting company. Carpenter is the sole source provider of rare earth elements that are embedded into Air Force systems. USAR is a USA rare earth company. They got enormous amounts of grants and they continue to get grants. Read their 10Q. Here I am selling treasuries to fund these purchases. ATI is a $15 billion company in rare earths. Very interesting animal. UUUU is a uranium purifier. Again, they are looking for uranium. They are funded a lot with grants and a little bit with revenue they produce. And Ardmore Shipping is the smaller size carriers. TK Tankers is the larger size one. Ardmore is the smaller. So as I started putting together, where does the ore go? How do we get rare earths into the United States? Who processes them? Who makes money? Where is the revenue coming from? These are the stocks I picked. I would love to hear your feedback. But here is what this did to me. My portfolio now is over allocated in 4 sectors. Consumer staples, I believe we will have to pay more for all of our staples. And that means when there is inflation, it's not even if there is inflation, when there is inflation, staples will increase and we'll continue to buy them. Energy is a little too cheap, and unfortunately with the Mideast crisis that is going on, stocks are going up there, but I got on that bandwagon before that, so my portfolio has had some benefits from there. But I do think there are stocks like Noble Corporation trading below their book value, so I piled on to that. So I'm over allocated in energy. Healthcare, it doesn't matter what the price of the drug is. There could be government price controls and there are some initiatives, but I don't know how far that is going to go. If it is a life-saving medication, and that is the area where I invest, life-saving, rare disease, cancer medications, then you're going to pay for it. It doesn't matter. Materials, this is where the rare earth materials come in. This is where gold, silver, so I'm over allocated in those and I'm under allocated in all the other sectors. My risk tolerance is very, very low. As you know, I'm 2% in equities, 97 in fixed income. Of that 97, 68% in treasuries, 10% in agencies, roughly 9% in muni bonds, and getting farther and farther into munis as time goes by. As far as my firepower, I have the long tail in the 10 to 20 years. That is where my muni bonds lie. My treasuries lie in the short area, and I am looking for another crash. And that is when I plan to come into the stock market. That is just my thesis. You have yours. I would love to hear your opinion. Thank you for watching, Yielder.